Russian hoax. Number one, the illicit scheme to clear Hillary Clinton framed Donald Trump. Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett, and also Fox News investigative reporter, contributor Sarah Carter, and security clearance defense attorney Sean Bigley is with us. Sarah, let's start with your breaking news. It gets complicated, but at the heart of it, this is a really big case because Mr. Adam Lovinger, represented by Sean, who's with us, he basically was able to expose, and now you have seen the documents that say...
Well, he was basically able to expose Stephen Halper's. And remember, Stephen Halper was a professor emeritus at Cambridge who was the central player in the FBI's Crossfire Hurricane investigation into President Donald Trump. And he was the man that the Washington Post and the New York Times, when they published their stories on Crossfire Hurricane, he was the person that they didn't want to out, the name that nobody wanted to reveal out of fear, based on intelligence community warnings, Sean, that people could either be killed or that his life would be in danger if his name goes public. Well, eventually his name did go public, and that was Stephen Halper. And what we discovered was that he was actually involved in every aspect of the FBI's investigation.
Slow down
from
right
Carter.
there. I want you to explain why Halper is important. This is very... So we did have the case of the FISA warrants, but then we have the issue of spies in the Trump campaign. And yes, Stephen Halper explained.
Yes, and Stephen Halper was prior to them taking on and asking the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court for that FISA warrant on Carter Page. He actually became acquainted with Page in July of 2016. He approached him. Page was invited to one of his Cambridge intelligence seminars, and that's where Page befriended Halper. And Halper and him became very close. And in fact, Halper was continuously asking Carter Page questions, asking him about his thoughts on Russia, asking him about this and that. And then later on in September 2000...
Did the spy in the Trump campaign have connections to Russia?
Well, this is what's even more interesting. Stephen Halper has direct ties to Russian intelligence because at his Cambridge intelligence seminars, twice he invited the former head of Russian intelligence. He invited the Russians
to the seminars. He's a spy in the Trump campaign.
Absolutely.
And then Sean's client, Adam Lovinger, finds this information.
Well, accidentally stumbled on it. He was doing his job at the Pentagon. He was at net assessment. He was going through contracts, and he realized, hey, here's this professor who's basically getting over $1 million in contracts to write reports. I don't understand what's going on here.
$2,000 a page, your report said.
That's absolutely true.
It's a lot of money. Good work if you can get it.
Yeah, and nobody gets that money, Sean. That's almost impossible. I mean, this is something that was...
So Stephen Halper is now then also, he has all his Russian contacts. He's getting paid $2,000 a page. He's working with the former CIA director of Obama, Hayden, correct?
Oh, yeah. We don't know that for sure. What we do know is that he was working with the Pentagon. There were direct links with high-level officials at the Pentagon, and that he was going overseas. He was making a lot of money, and he was conducting what appears to be diplomatic relations, which is forbidden under federal law when you're a contractor at the Pentagon. This isn't something that's part of your normal work routine. But let me bring up something really quick before you go to Sean. He is also directly connected, of course, to George Papadopoulos, and reached out to George Papadopoulos in September 2016, where he asked him, would you write a report for me? I'll pay you $3,000. Come to London. Let's talk. And then even more interestingly enough...
that sounds like poor Papadopoulos was set up.
Yes, that's exactly what Simona Papadopoulos, George Papadopoulos' wife, has said over and over again in interviews, saying that George was basically set up by Stephen Halper and another professor by the name of Joseph Misfud.
Part two is Carter Page in this story.
Yes, and so Carter Page, who develops a very close relationship with Stephen Halper, continues to email him, and according to the sources that we've spoken with and according to the reports written in the Washington Post and the New York Times, Stephen Halper was reporting back to the FBI information. But what really quick, he also goes back to Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, and I don't want people to forget about this. In 2014, when Flynn was at one of these seminars and attended a dinner one night, it was Stephen Halper who not only invited Flynn, but also invited a Russian woman, but Lakova, and I hope I'm saying her name correctly, and it was Stephen Halper Halper, who allegedly spread the rumor, the disinformation campaign, that apparently Flynn had some kind of bizarre contact with her during that dinner.
Let me bring in Sean. Your client, Adam Lovinger, stumbles across this information. And by the way, Sarah, I know you've seen it. Sean, I know you've seen it. And that Stephen Halper is the nexus that drags in Papadopoulos, Carter Page, and General Flynn, and he's a spy, and literally a spy within the Trump campaign?
Sean, this is unbelievable. It's an absolute bombshell. And I will tell you this, what we have essentially learned is that Stephen Halper invited the Trump campaign officials into the lion's den. This was not a set of organic meetings. This was not Halper reporting things that he's witnessed that he thought were concerning, as he has put out there in the media.
Documentary evidence.
We have an absolute ironclad document trail that shows that Halper invited the Russians, Halper foisted the Russians on the Trump officials at these meetings and at these seminars. So the spy that's looking for Russians is the one bringing the Russians into the campaign and surrounding all the people that have now gotten in legal trouble with Russians, the guy that the government put there. Is that a fair statement? This is a classic. Absolutely, Sean. This is a classic espionage tactic. You accuse the other side of doing what you are, in fact, doing, and that is the entire genesis of the Mueller investigation.
Has anybody like
Mr.
Jeff
Halper,
Sessions or anybody asked for this material?
This is breaking. This is today, Sean. This is brand new bombshell material.
Maybe they could watch our show and learn something. We found a lot of Russian connections. Hillary paying for Russian lies being spread as propaganda to the American people, Russian lies being used for FISA warrants. There's a lot of Russia here that have nothing to do with bank loan applications, tax returns, or taxi medallions. Greg Jarrett, let's go to you.
But they appear to have everything to do with the other side, Sean.
That's correct.
There's no question, but that there was a conspiracy afoot here, and that was to use people to insinuate themselves into the Trump campaign as spies, and in order to set up individuals as scapegoats, essentially, for the Trump-Russia collusion probe. You know, and the FBI is all in on this. They're paying for this.
Is this the insurance policy?
Oh, sure.
Is this where the firewall's holding? We don't want to be exposed. Right. Does that all come together?
Papadopoulos bar talk was never the precipitous moment for triggering the campaign, the election. It was the dossier, and the dossier was fabricated by a British spy being paid for by Hillary Clinton and the Democrats. Where is Jeff Sessions and Rod Rosenstein investigating that, which is clearly illegal?
And these, Sean Bigley, these documents will prove as such, correct?
Absolutely. Let me tell you briefly what they show. Number one, Stephen Halper co-led his series of seminars with a noted Putin apologist who spent a decade at the State Academy in Russia. Number two, Stephen Halper co-taught these seminars at Cambridge University with the former head of Russian intelligence. And number three, and perhaps most damning, Stephen Halper accepted funds from a front company for the Russian intelligence service, or what MI6 believes to be a front company for the Russian intelligence service.
And he was the spy that was used to try and fight. Everything is boomeranged. I said this year's the year of the boomerang. I hope your client, this is going to be interesting. Let's see if Robert Mueller pays a little attention to something Russia. You know, maybe instead of bot companies and people he's never going to get in a courtroom, maybe he could pay attention now if he cares about truth and real Russia collusion. All right, we'll follow the story. Thank you all for being with us. Congrats on the book, Greg. Sarah, great report. SarahACarter.com, Hannity.com if you want to read the whole report. By the way, it's long, but it's